I'm Jasmine, and I've been a senior project manager with Bennett Construction for the last 4 years. I thrive under pressure, in contrast to many of my coworkers who gripe about our demanding clientele and busy schedules. Seeing a project through to completion, from drawings to ribbon cutting, is really fulfilling. Despite its small size, my flat in downtown Portland is mine, or will be when I pay off the mortgage. On clear days, I can see Mount Hood in the distance from my balcony, which views out over the river. My phone buzzed this Friday night when I was sipping a glass of Pinot Noir and taking in a rare moment of alone. Mom's face lit up my screen. I tucked the phone between my shoulder and ear and said, "Hey, Mom," while refilling my glass. "Jasmine, honey." There was that artificial joy in her voice that generally indicated she was craving something. "Hey, next Saturday, we're having a family meeting with your father. We need you to join us. Everyone will be there. I'll prepare your favorite lasagna, the one with homemade sauce and 3 cheeses." My mom understood that my weakness was her famous lasagna. I couldn't resist grinning. "I'll be there." We hung up, and I went back outside to my balcony. I had not seen my folks for months. With the exception of certain holidays, we hardly ever crossed paths because of my 60-hour work weeks and their hectic retirement routine of community theater and golf. It would be interesting to see my younger siblings. At 24, the twins, Tyler and Tiffany, were 12 years my junior. They were still in elementary school, receiving the newest technology and lots of attention while I was moving into my first apartment and finishing college. Between raising me and rearing them, our parents' parenting style had drastically changed. For me, it was all about independence, saving money, and taking responsibility. I started washing my own laundry by the time I was 12. By the time I was 14, I was the twins' go-to babysitter whenever our parents wanted to go out. Tyler and Tiffany, on the other hand, had a lot more indulgence and less rules growing up. They were still being tucked in at night when I moved out when I was 18. At the age of 24, they both resided in apartments that our parents helped pay for while they were still figuring things out. Tiffany was now in between jobs after leaving her barista job due to her manager's abusive behavior, and Tyler had gone through 3 different college majors before deciding on communications. At precisely 4:00 p.m. on the next Saturday, I arrived into my folks' driveway. Tyler's motorbike and Tiffany's vivid blue Kia were already parked in front. Well, they had most likely been referring to me because I was the last to arrive. I heard laughter coming from within as I got closer to the front door. I pressed the doorbell, and it stopped suddenly. Mom replied with a grin that seemed a little forced and an apron on. "Jasmine, come in, she said, hitting me a brief embrace that had a perfume and garlic scent. Sitting closely together on the couch in the living room, the twins had their heads cocked in a secretive manner. They both looked up at me as I entered, their attitudes of false casualness identical. Tiffany remarked, "Hey, Jazzy," while twisting a lock of blonde hair around her finger. "Nice outfit. Arriving from the office?" It was Saturday, but I didn't bother correcting her. I nodded to my brother, and he waved half-heartedly without standing up. "Hi, Tiff, Tyler," I said. Mom was laying out the fine china, the set we used exclusively for Christmas and Thanksgiving, when I entered the dining room. Observing, "Wow, bringing out the fancy stuff. This must be some family meeting." My anxiety was sparked by the brief gaze that Mom and Dad shared. The twins strolled in and sat down opposite me, as usual, before I could inquire what was happening. The conversation stayed excruciatingly shallow all through supper. Mom mentioned her gardening group. Dad said he was thinking about getting a new golf club. The twins told me rumors about individuals in their buddy group that I didn't know. Even though it wasn't rare, it nevertheless hurt that no one inquired about my life or job. As promised, the lasagna was delicious, but the underlying tension in the room prevented me from enjoying it to the fullest. When Mom presented dessert, homemade tiramisu, another favorite of mine, her hands shook a little. "Okay," I murmured at last, putting my fork down. "What's happening?" "Mom has prepared 2 of my favorite foods, and you're all behaving strangely." Tell me what this is about, please. After exchanging another heated look, Dad cleared his throat. Jasmine, you know we're getting older, and we've been thinking about the future, he said. Mom got right in. We decided to finalize our will, and we wanted to tell you about it in person. I responded, okay, with caution. We decided, Dad said, that the house and the lake cottage will go to Tyler and Tiffany. There was silence in the room. My father glanced at me hopefully as I stared at him, waiting for the others. And I inquired at last. Mom responded, that's it, in a very guarded tone. Honey, you should comprehend. The twins are still figuring things out, and you're doing so well financially. You don't need the security as much as they do. I glanced at my siblings across the table. Both of them were attempting, but failing, to hide smug smiles. In order to avoid any mistake later, Tyler leaned forward and stated, just so we're clear, everything belongs to us. It seemed as though someone had hit me in the gut. Everything. The home where I had been contributing to the mortgage payments for the previous 4 years. Last summer, I spent $30,000 renovating the cabin. Mom's cheeks turned red. Jasmine, that's irrelevant. You are aware that family supports family. The words, yeah, family helps family, I said softly again. Like when I paid for both their college tuitions or when I send you $600 every month for household expenses. My parents couldn't look me in the eyes and turned their heads away. Tiffany gave a snort. Jazzy, don't be so prim and proper. You've always been envious of Mom and Dad's greater affection for us. Excuse me? My face was becoming hotter. It's true, said Tyler. Because you had to watch the kids while we had fun. You've always been angry with us. You were born first, and that's not our fault. I glanced at my parents, hoping they would stand up for me, say something, anything, to refute this absurd charge. Mom's face hardened instead. She added, Jasmine, you should feel ashamed. Having a family meal and discussing money, counting every dime has always been your obsession. Whose responsibility is it that your sister and brother are having trouble finding decent work in this economy? You've never made them take responsibility for anything. I retorted. They have never had to work for anything in their life, thus they are unable to maintain jobs. See? With victory, Tiffany remarked, jealous and greedy. My chair was pushed back from the table. Why see, I continued, is that I've been helping this family for years and have only ever received criticism in return. And now I find out that you're completely excluding me from the will. For what purpose? For being accountable? Dad got up suddenly. Jasmine, I think you should go. We can chat again when you've cooled down and are able to reason about this. As I collected my jacket and bag, I was struck into silence. From the other side of the room, the twins gave me a sly smile. Tyler called after me, saying, don't let the door hit you on the way out. This is our house now, not yours. It was a blur on the way home. I couldn't stop thinking about how blind I had been for so long. I had an out-of-body feeling on the journey home. I hardly noticed the road ahead of me as my hands tightened their grasp on the steering wheel till my knuckles became white. I somehow returned to my flat without any problems. I mumbled to myself, you're such an idiot, Jasmine, as I kicked off my shoes in the hallway. Such a complete and utter fool. I immediately walked to my wine rack and picked up a bottle of Cabernet, the pricey one I've been keeping for a special occasion, rather than the cheap one I generally use for cooking. It felt unique enough to learn that your family has been utilizing you like an ATM. Memories of all the times I had provided them with financial support over the years came flooding back as I poured myself a large glass. Tyler needed dependable transportation to school, so I provided him $5,000 as a down payment on a new car after he totaled his old one 3 years ago. When Tiffany made the decision to become a yoga instructor last year, I covered the $2,500 cost of her certification course. After a pipe burst and caused water damage to the lake cabin, I had to spend $30,000 restoring it. In the 4 years since my parents purchased the cottage, I have utilized it just twice. However, Paying their house payments 4 years ago, when my parents wanted to move out of our old family home, was by far the largest expense. Although they loved their present residence, they found it difficult to make their retirement income payments each month. Indeed, they obtained the mortgage on their own. They asked whether I could assist them with the payments when I was promoted. I have been paying their mortgage with $1,800 per month for the last 4 years, in addition to $600 per month for utilities and property taxes. I did the arithmetic and shouted out loud, "That's $2,400 a month." I was shocked to see that I had given them about $115,000 over the course of 4 years. For what purpose? To be honest, I was doing well financially. Therefore, I wasn't receiving anything in the bequest. I sat on the couch with my drink and gazed at the city lights. As a matter of fact, I had no real interest in inheriting their home or cottage. The contemptuous manner in which they had made the announcement, as though my efforts were inconsequential, was what caused me pain. Bribing me with my favorite meal? That was only deceptive. I launched my banking app and gazed at the planned transfers. $600 for parents' expenditures on the first of every month, and $1,800 for mom and dad's mortgage on the 15th. I took a big breath and stopped both automatic payments. After that, I shut off my phone, drank the last of my wine, and went to bed. I felt lighter than I had in years when I woke up the next morning. I was free of the burden of allocating a sizable portion of my income to my parents for the first time. In fact, I might begin saving heavily for my own future. I worked nonstop for the following 2 weeks, staying late at work and taking tasks home on the weekends. There were no calls or texts from my relatives, and my phone was wonderfully quiet. It seemed as though our encounter had never taken place. Then, precisely 14 days after the catastrophic supper, my mother texted me, saying, "Remember, Jasmine, that today is the due date for the mortgage payment. Additionally, the household funds must be received by Friday. This month's power bill is greater." I looked incredulously at my phone. Did she mean it? As if removing me from the will and publicly criticizing me were routine, she was still expecting me to contribute money after everything that had transpired. I replied by typing, "I'm going to stop paying my debts and mortgage. You've made it apparent that I have no financial interest in the property. Therefore, I won't support it. Make alternative plans, please." With my heart racing, I pressed send and put my phone down. It rang within 15 minutes. The screen showed Mom's name. I inhaled deeply before responding. Without saying hello, she said, "How dare you? You can't abruptly cease making payments. What are we meant to accomplish?" I answered, "Hello to you too, Mom," in a composed tone. "And now I'm warning you. I'm going to stop paying payments. This cannot be done to us. We are your parents. You have a duty." I interjected, saying, "I don't actually. I've been lending a hand willingly since I believed that we were a supportive family. However, I came to the realization that this arrangement is unfair to me after finding out that you and Dad are giving everything to Tyler and Tiffany." She snorted. "This is about the will. I was aware of it. You're merely jealous and avaricious. You were raised better than this by your father and myself. This is about respect, Mom. I've helped all of you out financially for years, and now I'm insulted at dinner and left out of the will. Being the family piggy bank is over for me." My hands trembling, I hung up before she could answer. Almost instantly, the calls came in, first from my father, then from my mother once again, and then from both twins. All of them went to voicemail. Their texts ranged from savage insults to heartfelt entreaties. Dad pleaded, "Jasmine, please," in one message. "Without you, we are unable to make the mortgage. You self-centered jerk will lose the house." Another growl came from Tyler. "You're the reason Mom is sobbing. I hope you're content." I banned all of their numbers after this for 2 days. I required tranquility. After a week, calls from relatives I hardly spoke to began to pile up on my phone. My father's brother resided in Arizona, followed by my cousin Steve and my Aunt Linda. My mother had apparently been busy promoting her version of events. Aunt Linda stated, "Your mom says you're trying to make them homeless." After I finally picked up one of her calls. "What's going on, honey?" I inhaled deeply before explaining the circumstances, including the will, the dinner, and, above all, the fact that I had been covering their mortgage for 4 years without the family members knowing. She uttered the words, "That can't be right," with genuine confusion. "Your mom told everyone you just helped them with the down payment." I retorted, "Since they purchased the house, I have made all of the mortgage payments plus additional money for bills. You can ask them directly." Similar discussions with other family members ensued. Some took sides with me, some with my parents, and some denied that I had been helping them out financially at all, claiming that I was lying to improve my own image. I finally put up a thorough explanation on Facebook, outlining the financial support I'd given over the years and the reasons I decided to stop, because I was tired of the rumors and accusations. "I love my family, but I can't keep supporting their way of life while being treated like an outsider," I said at the end. "I need to put my own future first now." The post received a lot of criticism in addition to dozens of positive comments. I was criticized by some family members for discussing family matters in public. Others said that since they are still your parents, I should continue to make mortgage payments regardless of the circumstances. I didn't hear from my family for a month. I'd started to think maybe they'd finally accepted my decision and moved on. Work was busy as usual, and I was finally enjoying the financial freedom of not supporting 4 extra adults. I'd even put a deposit down on that trip to Italy I'd been dreaming about for years. But peace never lasts long in my family. It was a Tuesday when I got the assignment to oversee a project in Sacramento. The company had just completed construction on a medical office building, and they needed someone to handle the final inspections and client walkthrough. "It's just 3 days," my boss assured me. "You'll fly out Wednesday morning and be back Friday night." I packed lightly, just a carry-on suitcase with the essentials and my laptop. The trip went smoothly. The client was thrilled with the building, the inspections passed with only minor issues to address, and I even managed to enjoy a nice dinner at a local restaurant recommended by the concierge at my hotel. By Friday afternoon, I was on a flight back home, feeling accomplished and ready for a relaxing weekend. When I eventually got at my apartment complex at 8:00 p.m., the first thing I noticed was that something appeared strange about my door. From down the corridor, as I came closer, my stomach fell. The entire door frame was coated in expanding foam, the sort that hardens into a solid mass. Someone had purposely sprayed it all over my door, making it hard to insert my key or open it from the outside. "What the hell?" I mumbled, setting down my luggage and feeling the foam. It was entirely hardened. There was no way I was getting into my flat without expert aid. I grabbed out my phone and dialed the building's emergency maintenance number, but received voicemail. Next, I tried the building manager, who answered on the 4th ring. "Mitchell, what can I do for you?" "Someone vandalized my apartment door," I stated, attempting to keep my voice calm. "They sprayed it with expanding foam. I can't get in." The person on the other end paused. "That's odd. I'll call our locksmith service, but it could be a couple hours before they can get there. It's Friday night." I spent over 3 hours sitting in the hallway by my bags before a drowsy-looking locksmith showed up with his equipment. When he spotted my door, he whistled. He noted, "Someone really didn't want you getting in when evaluating the damage. This is going to be tricky." Cutting away enough foam to reach the lock mechanism took him nearly an hour. I was tired and angry when I eventually made it into my apartment around midnight. I went straight to my laptop as soon as I was inside. After a parcel was stolen 6 months prior, I had a security camera put in my hallway. My front door was the direct target of the camera, which sent video to a cloud server that I could see from a distance. I started the replay after locating the pertinent time window. Initially, there was only an empty hallway. Then, on Thursday at 2:00 p.m., a well-known person showed up. My brother Tyler was sporting a sweatshirt up and a baseball cap pulled down over his eyes, but I could identify his gait from anywhere. After checking both sides of the hallway, he took a can out of his rucksack and started spraying the foam around the frame of my door. He worked carefully, covering the seam where the door joined the frame and every inch of the lock. After finishing, he quickly left after taking a moment to appreciate his job. I viewed the video 3 times, becoming more and more enraged each time. This was criminal vandalism, not petty retaliation, and fixing it correctly would cost thousands of dollars. I brought the videotape to the local police station the next morning and formally complained about my brother. As she received my statement, the officer said, "Do you have any idea why he would do this?" "Simply, financial disputes," I said. I didn't want to tell a stranger about all the stress in my family. I'm Tara, and I've been the neglected daughter all my life. My older sister Kelly was the star kid from the start. Though they never explicitly stated it, our parents made it obvious who they liked most. Even as a young child, I learned to anticipate it. Kelly usually got new clothing when we were kids, but I got her hand-me-downs. She would receive pricey birthday presents, such as the newest video games or designer clothing. I would get generic toys or useful items like notebooks and socks. When I was 12 years old, Kelly received a brand new iPhone for Christmas. I gave her a flip phone that was barely functional at 3 years old. Activities at school followed the same pattern. Although they only attended around half of my debate tournaments, Mom and Dad never missed one of Kelly's volleyball matches. They unquestionably covered Kelly's piano tuition even after I advanced to the state finals. However, they told me that I could practice sketching at home and that art lessons were too costly. Our parents arranged a huge celebration for Kelly's high school graduation, inviting everyone they knew. We had a quiet supper at home for my graduation, just the 4 of us. I received a bus pass, and Kelly bought a new car for college. Kelly needs reliable transportation, Dad had said. The campus is huge, and she has a lot of ground to cover. My legs seemed to function perfectly, even though I attended the same institution. Years ago, I gave up expecting anything from them. I found a little flat on the outskirts of the city and moved away as soon as I could. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and I used the office job I had obtained after college to pay for it myself. As she pursued her passion and experimented with other employment options, Kelly resided in a lovely apartment in the heart of the city that our parents had bought for. The pattern of life became predictable. Once a month, I would go to my parents for mandatory meals, where I would listen to them brag about Kelly's most recent achievements, and they would seldom inquire about my life. After grinning and nodding, I would count down the minutes until I could drive back to my apartment and try not to feel resentful. Up until last Sunday, when everything shifted, that pattern persisted. It was precisely 6:00 p.m. when I got to my folks' place. Kelly was looking through her phone at the dining table already. She looked up for a moment. "Hey, sis." Mom was busy serving Kelly's favorite dish, the pot roast she had prepared. Everyone save me had their wine served by Dad. I had to ask for a glass since he forgot. Mom and Dad listened intently as Kelly discussed the startup she was considering joining, and the conversation proceeded as usual. Regarding my recent promotion, hardly one inquired. However, Mom's expression brightened with anticipation halfway through dessert. As she said, "Girls, I have wonderful news. Your father and I have gifts for both of you today." Kelly instantly became alert. I had the well-known tummy twist that occurs whenever presents are involved. My contribution would be, well, an afterthought, while Kelly's would be fantastic. Mom reappeared with 2 huge manila envelopes after vanishing into the study. With a flourish, she gave one to Kelly and, almost as an afterthought, gave the other to me. Eagerly, Kelly plunged into hers. I cautiously opened mine, already getting my thankful expression ready for whatever letdown was beyond. At the same moment, we both took out documents that looked legitimate. Mom said, "These are property documents," with a smile. "For you, Kelly, your grandfather's estate. We are certain that, as someone with such a bright future, you will make excellent use of this lovely house." At that moment, they all looked at me, and Mom gave me a little grin. "We're also gifting you Grandpa's cottage, Tara. Isn't that pleasant? You've always been quite self-sufficient. I gazed at the documents I was holding. The cottage she was describing was nothing more than a shack, a run-down building devoid of running water, electricity, or even a suitable access road. It had been deserted for years, though Grandpa had occasionally used it as a hunting cabin. Not only was it uninhabitable, I felt the same emotion that had accompanied me all through my childhood, a mix of hurt, rage, and resignation. However, something strange occurred this time. Something broke inside of me. Are you serious? My voice was fairly steady as I spoke. You're giving Kelly a fully renovated 3-bedroom house with a garden, and I get a rotting shack in the middle of nowhere. Mom's eyes became wide with shock. I didn't often push back. She continued, Now, Tara, in a begging tone, you're acting too theatrical. 3 acres of land, a nice small cottage with possibilities. You may make it into a beautiful hideaway with a little work. Some effort? Even to my ears, it sounded harsh when I chuckled. There is no internet, no water, and no electricity, Mom. There are most likely holes in the roof. It would cost a fortune to make the property habitable, and you know I don't have that kind of money. Kelly said, You should be grateful, as she was already looking through real estate listings on her phone to determine the value of her new home. Most people don't get gifted property at all. That was the last straw. Grateful? I got up so fast that my chair tumbled over. Kelly, I've been thankful for your leftovers my entire life. I hoped that they would treat us equally for once. However, I was mistaken. I grabbed the property papers and stuffed them in my handbag. I responded, This isn't a gift, suddenly trembling. It is a hardship. In order to avoid paying taxes on Grandpa's useless property, you are dumping it on me. Mom let out a gasp. That's not true. However, I could see by the look in her eyes that they had done just that. I'm done, was all I said. I'm done pretending this is normal. I ignored their cries behind me as I left. I cried as I drove home, recalling Grandpa's stories of how he would go to the cabin when he wanted to get away from everyone. I realized for the first time how he felt. For the following 2 days, I made an effort to put the cabin out of my mind. I went to work, came home, watched Netflix, and acted as though nothing had happened at supper. I let Mom's 2 calls go to voicemail. Her messages were typical. She felt that I was exaggerating, that I had to be more grateful, and that I ought to give her another call. Ultimately, I chose to examine the property records instead. I saw the property tax assessment at that point. I mumbled, You've got to be kidding me, as I gazed at the number for a claimed piece of worthless property. The taxes were astronomically high, coming in at about $3,000. That accounted for a large portion of my well-adjusted budget. The next morning, I made a call to the county assessor's office. Yes, that's correct, the clerk, who seemed bored, said. It has a road frontage and is 3 acres. The place is growing increasingly appealing. I felt ill when I hung up. If I didn't act quickly, this gift would deplete my money. The answer appeared to be clear. I had to sell it. That night, I took copies of the property paperwork, made an internet listing, and pulled some old pictures of the cabin from a family album. In the hopes that someone could be interested in it only for the property, I listed it honestly as a fixer-upper cabin on 3 acres, sold it as is, and set the price at $155,000. I waited after that. There was nothing for 2 months, not a single question. Just as I was about to decrease the price out of desperation, everything changed. I discovered 3 messages from individuals interested in the property when I got up one Tuesday morning. There were 5 more by midday. Without ever viewing it, I had an offer of $20,000 at the end of the day. I was so excited I almost yelled. This exceeded my request by $5,000. Just as I was ready to phone back and say yes, a second offer of $25,000 arrived. An odd thing was going on. The bids kept rising the next day, reaching $30,000 and $35,000. Calls came in constantly, with each bidder outbidding the others. I was very perplexed. By Friday, I was rendered dumbfounded by a call I received. This is Thomas Raymond from Evergreen Development Group, Miss Wilson. For your property, we would like to make you a $50,000 offer. I almost dropped my phone. $50,000 for a dilapidated cabin. Though my mind was racing, I consented to a meeting for the following week. I didn't know what was going on, but something significant was happening. I looked up information about my property and the neighborhood online for hours that night. After several fruitless searches, I finally came across a brief notification about a planned environmentally friendly residential development near my property on the website of the County Planning Commission. That was insufficient information. Someone with real estate market knowledge was what I needed. On Saturday morning, I gave my pal Jessica a call. She had been a real estate agent for years, and we have been friends since college. I need your assistance, Jessica. Are you aware of any plans for construction in the area of my grandfather's former cabin? The line paused for a moment. Where exactly is this cabin? I gave her the address. Holy Tara, she whispered. Are you sitting down? That whole area is poised to erupt. Green Valley Developments is creating a large eco-village for affluent executives and celebrities. Solar power plants, totable restaurants, luxury mansions with low environmental effect. They've been discreetly buying up all the land they can acquire. But why didn't they hear about this sooner? I inquired. They'd kept it incredibly secret to minimize price speculation. I only know because my supervisor is managing some of the transactions. She dropped her voice. Sell for $50,000. Definitely. Evergreen Development is most likely employed by Green Valley if they are phoning you. They are only intermediaries attempting to purchase your land at a discount and then sell it. How much should I ask for? Jessica chuckled. At least 20 times what they provided, to be honest. Your 3 acres are most likely worth about $1 million. In this case, I almost choked. $1 million for Grandpa's hunting cabin. We hung up, and I sat stunned on my couch, trying to take in the situation. It's possible that the useless property my parents gave me in order to avoid paying taxes is worth a fortune. The irony escaped my notice. I gave Thomas Raymond a call back on Monday. Mr. Raymond, I've been considering your offer, I answered, attempting to seem calm. I'm willing to sell, but not for $50,000. With ease, he said. What price did you have in mind? $1 million. The line was silent for a long time. His voice had become rough by the time he spoke. That's an absurd amount, Miss Wilson. Maybe you don't understand the property's nature. I completely get it. 3 acres are precisely where Green Valley Developments want to build their new eco-village. One more quiet. I see you've done your homework. I have. And I know my land is necessary for the project to move forward. The statement, $1 million is still out of the question, was delivered assertively. However, it appears that we should review our offer. Would you be open to meeting to talk more about this? I consented to meet at their office the next day. It was a fierce negotiation. Thomas brought the real purchasers from Green Valley, and I invited Jessica along as an advisor. Their first investment was $100,000. My response was $950,000. They reached $300,000. I dropped to $900,000. After 3 hours, we were all worn out. $800,000 was the last bid on the table. Jessica said, "Take it to me. That's a fantastic deal." I glanced at the group of experts waiting for my response across the table, all dressed in pricey suits. It's likely that these individuals had never been informed they weren't worthy. They had never had to rely on hand-me-downs or leftovers. I'll accept $800,000, I eventually said, but I want the deal closed within 2 weeks. We all shook hands when they nodded. I witnessed the final documents being signed 2 weeks later while I sat in the title company's office. I was suddenly rich once the salesperson gave me a check. My passport to freedom was the undesired gift. I paid off my $97,000 in college debts as soon as I deposited the payment. The search for an apartment came next. I discovered a lovely condo with 2 bedrooms in a pleasant area of the city. I still had around $380,000 after paying $320,000 for the condo. I never thought I'd have so much money. I realized I needed assistance effectively handling it. I studied communications in college, not finance. I encountered Michelle, a lady who specialized in unexpected wealth management. After investigating a number of financial advisors, Michelle assisted me in creating a diversified investment portfolio, allocating the majority of the assets to a combination of bonds, index funds, and a few well-chosen companies. We also put some money aside for angel investments in businesses she believed had promise. I made the decision to continue working even though I had enough money to stop. The regularity provided my day structure, and I liked my coworkers. However, the knowledge that I was financially secure altered my perspective on everything. I no longer had the low-grade worry I had endured for years about handling crises, conserving enough money, and paying bills. I made modest lifestyle adjustments at first. I purchased new apartment furnishings. I bought a dependable mid-range sit-in to replace my 10-year-old vehicle. I started purchasing food without comparing pricing. I then made plans for the 3-week journey throughout Europe that I had been dreaming about since I was a youngster. Seeing Paris, Rome, and Barcelona had always felt like an unattainable dream. I was now choosing hotels and making travel plans. I shared a couple pictures of my new passport and packed luggage on Instagram the night before my trip, writing, "Dream coming true. I'm coming to Europe." I didn't give it much thought until a week later when browsing through likes and comments at a cafe beside the Eiffel Tower. The majority were just good wishes from friends and coworkers, but I was particularly struck by one message from my cousin Amber. "I love your new apartment too. When did you relocate?" When I realized I had uploaded a couple pictures of my new apartment before to the trip, I froze. I hadn't mentioned the move to my extended family directly. Although Amber and Kelly spoke frequently, Amber and I weren't really close. I ignored the concern and carried on with my vacation. My mother had left 3 missed calls and a text message that said, "Please call us when you get back," when I got home. On Sunday, we would be delighted to welcome you around for supper. Since leaving my parents 6 months ago, I hadn't talked to them. Curiosity overcame my desire to dismiss the message. Now, what did they want? "Hi, Mom," I said as she picked up the phone. "Tara," she said in an excessively cheerful voice, "you're back. You have been missed. This Sunday, are you able to join us for dinner? Kelly will also be present, and your father and I would be delighted to meet you." After hesitating, I consented. With a feeling of déjà vu, I traveled to my folks' house on Sunday. Mom gave me a warm embrace, as though I hadn't just stormed off at the conclusion of our previous conversation. At first, dinner was unexpectedly enjoyable. Instead of Kelly's favorite foods, Mom had prepared my favorite lasagna. They inquired about Europe and appeared to be really curious about my responses. The true intent of the invitation was not revealed until dessert. Mom remarked nonchalantly, "We saw pictures of your new apartment on Amber's feed. It looks lovely, very spacious." "Thanks," I said hesitantly. "I'm happy with it." "Amber mentioned it's in the Westbrook," Dad replied. "What a lovely building that is. Costly." I took a mouthful of apple pie and nodded. "She also said you own it outright," Mom went on. "No mortgage." And there it was. I put my fork down. I said, "I told Amber I had a mortgage," with caution. She must have misunderstood. Kelly gave a snort. "Tara, hurry up. We are aware that your pay would not allow you to afford such a house. We're not dumb." To buy myself some time to consider, I took a drink of water. When I eventually said, "I've been making good investments. I'd also put in a lot of work. For me, everything is going fine." "What kind of investments?" Dad pushed. "Market for stocks. Property. A variety of things," I said hazily. Kelly gave an eye roll. "Avoid lying. You sold Grandpa's cabin, as we know. Local news outlets are covering the Eco Village development extensively. The way they'd obtained all the required land pieces is being emphasized. Because it was one of the remaining surviving structures, your small hut was especially noted. With no more pretense of casual curiosity, Mom leaned closer. Tara, how much did you sell it for? I thought about lying, but why would I? They would finally learn. $800,000. There was silence in the room. Mom's face became white. Dad's mouth actually fell open. Kelly's eyes became wide with surprise. Kelly was the first to recover, and her surprise soon gave way to rage. Don't you tell any of us that you've been sitting on nearly $1 million. You're suffering, and we're having trouble paying for my wedding while Mom and Dad are anxious about retirement. I laughed without a sense of humor. Your entire education was funded by your parents. They purchased an automobile for you. For years, they covered your rent. Grandpa's real house, which alone is worth at least $500,000, is yours. That's different, irritated Kelly. How is it different? She said, because we're family. Families exchange items. Families don't conceal wealth and seem impoverished while enjoying lavish trips. Abruptly weary of the entire discussion, I got up. I ought to leave. I appreciate supper. Mom took hold of my arm. Tara, hold on. Let's avoid conflict. We only thought that you would wish to give the family a little of your good fortune. If we hadn't given you the cabin after all. If you hadn't given me the cabin, I said, you would have sold it yourself and kept all the proceeds. You provided it to me in order to shift the tax burden onto me since you believed it to be worthless. Additionally, I will not give you my money. Disregarding their shouts behind me, I left for the second time in 6 months. I pondered whether I would ever be able to have a typical connection with my family as I drove home to my new condo. The lawyer for my parents wrote to me 2 weeks after the tragic supper. Michelle, my investment manager, suggested a reputable lawyer, so I gave her a call. I was sitting in David Chen's office the next day, presenting him with all of my paperwork. Then he went over everything and stated, "This is straightforward. You received the property via a lawful transfer. The deed is in your possession. The sale was carried out correctly. Their assertion is unfounded. Will they actually sue?" David reclined in his seat. They would lose, but they could. They're probably bluffing. Let's react and observe. We agreed to meet at his workplace. My parents showed up with Richard Daniels, their dapper-looking lawyer. I took David along and sat quietly as the lawyer spoke. Richard started by saying, "My clients are ready to negotiate in good faith. They believe a 30% share of the proceeds would be reasonable, given the circumstances." David's answer was forceful yet courteous. The property was officially held by Miss Wilson. More than a year ago, the deed was correctly transferred into her name. She was free to sell it whenever she wanted. "The transfer was made under false pretenses," Richard retorted. "My clients had no knowledge of the development plans." David said, "Miss Wilson did not either when she was given the property. She discovered the information through her own diligence after inheriting what everyone, including your clients, believed was an essentially worthless cabin." For over an hour, the back and forth went on. My mother finally cut me off. "This is ridiculous," she remarked in a shaky voice. "In 3 months, Kelly will tie the knot. We're having trouble paying for the wedding. Are you unable to assist us? 10% would have a significant impact." It nearly made me feel terrible for her, nearly. "No," I said. "I'm not going to give you a percent. If you wish, you may sue me, but David has already laid out the process." My dad's face flushed. "The money isn't the point here. Respect is at issue. We placed food on the table, provided a shelter over your head, and reared you." I concluded by saying, and made sure I knew I was second best every single day of my life to him. "Since I was 18, I have lived alone. I made the effort to attend college. My career was developed by myself. I'm now in charge of my financial decisions." Soon after, the meeting came to a close. David informed me they had no legal basis to defend their actions, yet my parents and their attorney left without a resolution. They most likely wouldn't have sued if they hadn't done so in a matter of months. He was correct. There was no litigation. Rather, a worse event occurred. The rumor machine in the family went into overdrive. Second cousins, great aunts, and distant relatives I hadn't seen since I was a youngster began bombarding my phone with texts. All of a sudden, they wanted to get back together. My dear Tara, it has been much too long. Hey, cuz, do you recall me? I have a fantastic business opportunity. I hate to ask, but my son needs surgery, and our insurance won't cover it. There were countless tales, each one more desperate than the one before it. Most of them felt like blatant efforts to profit from my sudden windfall, but others were undoubtedly real. I stopped answering unfamiliar phones and banned the most persistent ones, as David had advised. I modified my social network privacy settings and my email address. Having to defend myself against my own family felt odd, but it was required. There were just a handful of my family left, the ones who had kept in touch even when they believed I had nothing. Emma, my cousin, had always been like a sister to me. My Uncle Joe, who consistently sent me birthday cards, those who appreciated me before I was wealthy. My life had a new rhythm 6 months after I sold the cottage. Despite taking on tasks I truly loved, rather than merely the ones that paid the most, I was still employed by the same firm. I took trips when I felt like it. I created a cozy existence that was ultimately mine. I came upon a pamphlet from a charity that promotes children's education one day while going through the mail. Rather of discarding it, I put it away. I researched the group on the internet that evening. With the majority of their cash going directly to programming rather than administrative expenses, they got an exceptional grade. They'd offered scholarships to disadvantaged kids, particularly those who were passed over by conventional merit-based initiatives. The next day, I made a sizable but anonymous gift. It was pleasant. It's so wonderful that I looked into other charities, including programs that assist people leave toxic family circumstances, mental health services for young adults, and groups that support first-generation college students. I made anonymous donations to dozens of causes throughout the course of the next year. Michelle assisted me in creating a sound charitable giving strategy that would be both tax-efficient and long-lasting. These weren't only gifts. They were investments made in individuals who made me think of myself. I never made amends with Kelly or my folks. I occasionally learned about them from family rumors. Kelly's wedding was extravagant. Despite their continued financial difficulties, my parents were nevertheless able to buy her a substantial present. A few things remained constant, and that was all right. I had discovered my own way. I had to thank them in a weird way. None of this would have occurred if they had not given me that useless cottage, if they had treated me fairly even once in my life.